Hospital porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panmo TV and welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2025. This is the first video of the new year. I hope you had a good new year, had fun, had frolics, drunk a lot, things like that, as we tend to do in New Year. I hope you weren't in Scotland where the Hogmanay celebrations were cancelled. That was a bit of a shock, actually. Did you hear about that? There's the usual Hogmanay street parties in Edinburgh, and the outdoor firework displays and stuff, they were all cancelled. And I thought, oh my God, according to the Scots, if you do that, the sun will not rise on the following morning. But it did. And the indoor events were still permitted and private events were still permitted. But the big firework display and everything in Edinburgh was banned, because of the bad weather. Oh, dearie me. It's just like, what's up with the Scots? I mean, you expect them to be out there in their string vests and a beer can in each hand and stuff like that. So they're one of the most robust people in the world. But there you go. That's how it goes. Anyway, I hope you had a good time, guys. We're back for 2025, and I have reintroduced the tradition of having a UFO disclosure video as first video of the year. I try to do it on New Year's Day if possible. I've left it a couple of days this time because of my voice, to try and help it improve a bit. Now I've still got the cough and the sore throat and the, as you can hear, a sort of huskiness to my voice, which it's done wonders for my dating profile. But I've had all these women mistaking me for Barry White, because when they just hear me and don't look at me. But it does make speaking more difficult. But I think I'm going to have to put up with this for a while, because in my experience, when I have colds, flu, COVID, etc., the voice change tends to stick with me for quite a long time afterwards. So, excuse me, I'm still going to be coughing, the nose blowing. The nose blowing won't be a problem, because my nose is almost better. But anyway, I hope you are well, whatever you're doing. Now, I should point out that I've given this video a slightly controversial title. You may notice I've called it UFO Disclosure 2025. This is the series, the project. But I've given the actual video the title, The Disclosure President. Now, I've used that title before in association with Donald Trump. The difference is this time I have not added a question mark. And I'll come into why I think that is the case. But there's a little bit of controversy there, I think. I know some of you won't agree with this, but I think we can safely drop the question mark at this point. Definitely. The background, now you may be interested in the background I'm using. How much you can see of it. There we go. It's Jesse Marcel. As you can see, it's Jesse Marcel Senior there. This picture was taken on the 8th of July 1947 in General Ramey's office. Very, very famous picture. As you can see, he's not holding bits of a weather balloon. He's holding a drone, and this has been very well done. Actually, they've even filled in with AI. They filled in the bits where which he'd normally be covered. The parts of his body were covered because he was holding this big sheet of aluminium foil, which of course was not the debris he picked up from the Brazil Ranch. So I think this is kind of a joke, indicating that we're looking at a guy holding what is essentially a piece of equipment. In this case, it's a modern drone he's holding. It's all part of the cover-up. This idea that these are drones, drones are just the modern equivalent of the weather balloon or the swamp gas or the actual balloons, the Chinese balloons and things like that. The drones are the latest reiteration of that. I've done an entire video about that, and I should have chosen this background for it, actually. I don't know if that meme was circulating back then, but we're going to come on to the drones for certain. But let's go into the various disclosure updates since the last program I did on this particular subject. First of all, Jimmy Carter has died. This is a sad moment. Well, it's not. I mean, it's not the end of the world. Jimmy Carter is a former president of the United States. He was president from 1977 to 1981. And he died a couple of days ago at the age of 100. So I suppose you can't really complain. I suppose if it's when someone dies, it's sad when someone dies. But if they hit, when they achieve what he's done and they've reached the big three figures, then you can't really complain, can you? But anyway, he was the 39th president of the United States. And what a strange thing happened in Leary, Georgia. in 1969. At that time, he was governor of the state, and he even did a report in 1973 to the International UFO Bureau about what happened. He didn't say anything while he was president, but afterwards he spoke out about it. Now, he was still giving a speech at a place called the Lions Club in Leary, Georgia, and his friend Shirley MacLaine was there. And Shirley MacLaine, as you know, she's an actress, but you may, I mean, she's a bit before most people's time, including mine, but she was a bit of a kind of a woo-woo. Not specifically about UFOs, but she wrote several books about spiritualism, the esoteric occult and things like that. And he describes a strange object which appears to be a light with a halo, elongated. And believe it or not, he was even on a Skeptic podcast. He was on Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And they were very pleased because, we got a president on our show, yeah. But this has been explained as several things. Some people thought he saw Venus. That's the usual thing. That's the usual sort of weather balloons, etc. came out. Now there has been a plausible possible explanation for this, which I do. Which is more difficult to dismiss, which is that there was actually a satellite re-entry at the time. And it's possible because, I mean, seeing Venus, stuff like that, he'd have known about this. He was a naval officer. He was a submariner. He was used to taking like navigation shots through periscopes and things like this. He would have known what Venus looked like. He would have known what weather balloons looked like. But this was a bit different. There actually was a satellite re-entry at the time, which could have confused him. And that can't be denied. Even a big-time tinfoil hatter like me has to admit that possibly Carter simply saw that. So that's to be explained. Anyway, he did say it made him very, very interested. It made him interested in things. Now, it made him interested in things like UFOs. And apparently he did make some inquiries during his presidency and was rebuffed because he wasn't on the bigot list, as it's called. Now, let's return to Trump. Trump has, I'll show you the thing. I did a couple of videos covering the election in November. The final results are in, and it is basically a grand slam. Clean sweep, whatever we want to call it, full house, hat trick, whatever you want to call it here. This is the entire result as you see them here. Electoral college points, 226 to Harris, 312 to Trump. Overwhelming, plus he got the popular vote by about 7 or 8 million. Oh God, you see here 50% versus 48% in terms of so you can see exactly 77 million versus 75 million. So it was actually just over 2 million difference. Pardon me. Sorry to over exaggerate the Trump slide just slightly, but it was a significant event in a nation that is notoriously split 50-50 on everything political. This is a really extraordinary thing. Every single swing state went to Trump. Harris didn't even gain a single precinct, which was not Democrat, which was not Republican held last time. Good news is he's also got the legislature here, U.S. Senate. He's got 53 seats versus 47. He's also got a House majority, 220 to 215. It took over a month to resolve all this, as you can see here. Now there'll be changes in the midterms. Indeed, during the next Senate elections there'll be these things filled in. But so for at least 2 years, though, this is the situation it's going to be for at least 2 years. There will be by-elections, of course, as well. But generally speaking, he's got the legislature on his side. He's also got the courts at the moment. There's been some attempts by his enemies and our enemies, the deep state, to try and reshuffle the Supreme Court and the various other federal courts. This is the attempt that's going on. But at the moment, excuse me, with the exception of Ketanji, what's her name, Diversity Hire Brown, he's still got most of the judges on his side on the Supreme Court. Now there's a lot of pressure being put on some of the judges on the Supreme Court to retire, and on the federal courts as well. And it's not they can't force these people out. So, but there's been sort of things they've been, there's been messages sent to them saying, you're getting old. Maybe you should think about leaving, but especially before the 20th of January, things like that, because they want these people to retire and get out, and then then the Biden administration can replace them with the judges that they want. Because unless the courts are on the side of the president, he's going to have a hard time of it, because they call the US president the most powerful man in the world. In fact, he's nothing of the sort. The entire US system is designed to prevent one person getting too much power. The president's power is actually very, very limited by the rest of the system. So we can only hope, I think, that those judges hang on for just over 2 weeks. This has been a very tense. It's been a very tense almost 3 months now, I think, between the November 8th and January the 20th, because they have been carrying out this scorched earth policy, which I've discussed on Hapanmo Voice, with the machinations in the legislature. But also they're trying to cause economic woes. They're trying to cause political discord and inflame the Ukraine situation, things like that. They're trying to it's a scorched earth policy. They're trying to devastate the entire landscape. So Trump has massive amounts of fiscal and diplomatic problems to sort out when he takes power. So he can't get anything else done. That's the hope. And so this is why I'm doing my detox, by the way. I'm doing that for that reason. I'm continuing it until January the 20th. Which incidentally is a lot more, I'm finding it more difficult this time. I wrote an article on Hapanmo Voice, actually, just yesterday. I'm finding it more difficult. I'm finding I'm really feeling more hungry. I'm craving what you might call proper food much more than I did beforehand. And this could be because I was saying on previous videos that I had quite a lot of reserve energy in the form of my body fat, which was, let's face it, it wasn't particularly meager, was it? There's quite an abundance of it. But I think I've actually exhausted it. The easily combustible, there's different types of body fat, and I know there's one type that's very easily combustible, and your body can use it for energy. But when that is actually exhausted, it's much more difficult to get for your body to get energy from your other body fats. It's much more difficult to metabolize that. So I'm now starting to crave normal food a lot more. But don't worry, I will hold out. I will hold out, guys. Just 16 more days. My energy levels have taken a tumble, actually, as well. I might have to do something just if it gets too bad. But I'm going to hold out. I'm going to hold out with the general idea of a detox until the 20th of January. Been feeling the cold a lot more as well. I mean, it's quite surprising how body fat acts as an insulator. But look at me. Look. Oh, you can't see. Sorry, because of my green screen effect. But yeah, I mean, if you saw me now and you haven't seen me for a couple of months, you'd be surprised at my physique, how thin I am. It surprises me. Right. So that's what I'm doing in terms of the Trump situation. I'll come back to Trump in a minute as well, because there's more to say about that. A lot more to say. Now, according to Richard Dolan, this did actually come up in the congressional video, but I think this is significant. Richard Dolan has mentioned it again. There was an attempt, apparently, by Bigelow Aerospace to buy secret technology from Lockheed Martin. Now, that didn't work out, but there were 2 attempts, apparently, and that was probably something to do with the ORSAP thing, which Bigelow was involved in. So we're talking 2007. Like, they didn't do it because they probably realized that Bigelow would actually blow the whistle if that happened. So no one said anything about that at the time. Everyone kept quiet, and Lockheed Martin, of course, wouldn't play along. Now, a new UFO Wood has been very busy. There's been a couple of new documentaries released, as you might have seen. And one is called The Program. And if you've seen The Program, so I'm just going through my tabs here, my notes. Here we go. Right, The Program is a new documentary by James Fox. And it was very hotly anticipated. Now, I have watched it. And I've done a review on Hapanmo Voice. And, let's face it, UFO Wood is quite a crowded market now. There are a lot of new videos and new movies coming out. In fact, a new one came out at about the same time, which I'll say more about in a minute. You know, James Fox has been doing this scene for a long time. He's an Anglo-American. He's American. He sounds American, but he's actually English by birth. I've met his dad actually. His dad was at Stairway. I'll just speak to him briefly. And this was a very troubled production. This program that you may remember, no one was exactly sure when it was going to come out because there was a lot of issues to do with the previous distributor that pulled the rug out from under his feet, and so he had to reorganize that. And you know that can be a double-edged sword because it could be. I think it may have been an opportunity to allow him to add a few more scenes. I hope so. So I'm sure that James didn't waste that time. Now, the film itself is like as with Moment of Contact, which I've done an entire watch party over, it's quite expensive. It's 15 quid on Amazon. There's no rental option. So that might put a few people off. I would say it's still worth it. It's still worth getting. I enjoyed it. I think there's some well-composed, it's well made. There's some well-composed kind of time-lapse vignettes. And it begins with a recap of the history behind the current situation. And there's interviews with people like Andre Carson who haven't yet spoken publicly about this. There's also a number of interviews with people who claim to have insider information on the UAP program. And some of them speak out anonymously, which is fair enough. Others are prepared to speak openly, talk in a lit location, giving their full identity. There's this guy called Lenval Logan. Now, he's someone I've not heard of before. He's a Army intelligence guy. Funny enough, he looks like an alien. If you watch it, you'll see he's got see the shape of his head and his eyes. He looks like an actual alien himself. Maybe he's a hybrid. But he's also got some. I mean, I've not heard of this guy before. He's never spoken out before. But he's got this other guy called Jason Sands. Now, he's the bloke who allegedly he killed an alien. He met an alien he came across this weird alien in a military uniform in Nevada. All kinds of other stories he tells. I don't know what to make of it. I know that there's a guy he's a former member of his unit in the U.S. Marine Corps has come out. No, sorry, that's Michael Herrera. So I'm getting mixed up. I'm getting ahead of myself. But I know a lot of people think his story's a bit dubious. I don't know. It's difficult because I feel sorry for these people who are genuine when they come, because sometimes all they have is their story, and of course a lot of it are not believed. A lot of them don't believe. A lot of the backslappers, and they just turn on them and say, "Well, because if you've got no other evidence other than your story, we're not interested, and we're assuming you're lying." Our default position is you're making it up. And the sad thing is, they could be right because people do make shit up in this business. I did this interview with Jordan Sather on Herpanmo Radio, and we were talking about the whole situation with Corey Good and David Wilcock, and people like that. Yeah. Others, there's a lady called Sarah Gam. Now, she was very persuasive. I was impressed with her testimony, actually. And there's even a point where they ask her a question, and there's a long pause, and there's a close-up of her face. And before she answers, and that's very, very different to the Richard Mingus case. Do you remember? I can't show it to you on YouTube, but you can see it in the alt tech versions of my Meadows video, where I review the UFO conspiracy road trip thing. That thing they wanted me to be in, and I said, "No way, bugger off! I'm not doing it." Richard Mingus, one of Annie Jacobson's witnesses, comes forward, and all these what do I call them, contestants. Victims, mugs, they go forward and they say, "Mr. Mingus, when you were working at Area 51, did you see any aliens?" And then immediately cuts away. And I suspect they actually filmed it separately. And Mingus he gives a strange look and he says, "No." That's very obviously theatrical. That's staged. They told him to pause before answering with this rather sort of like this look on his face that says, "Oh my God, these people are stupid." That was deliberate. The BBC set that up. I think with Sarah Gam, it's different. Now, there's one guy called Naval X, who protects his privacy quite considerably. This is the same pattern as in the guy Military Acts in Moment of Contact, this Brazilian guy. So again, I feel sorry for the genuine ones when there are so many fakes. Another thing that the program does, it has an interview with Gary McKinnon. Now, this is sort of quite an old piece of UFO disclosure history, but I think it's very important. And there's this quick interview with Gary, and he talks quite openly about his personal experience, which was quite difficult for him. And also, James Fox investigates Calvine. Now, I've done a couple of videos on Calvine myself. He calls it the photograph of the century. He interviews Dr. David Clark. He interviews Craig Lindsay, and of course, he interviews Nick Pope. You cannot make this documentary without having Nick Pope, can you? And Fox then goes to where he believes the exact location where the photo was taken. That's always been a bit of a mystery. Now, what's the most interesting bit of the program is that Fox confronts Dr. David Clark over the same conundrum I had with him, because old folklore man was just saying, "Oh, there's only two possibilities. It's either a hoax or it's a balloon made by the government." So he's basically, folklore man is ruling out all non-human origins for this object. And so Clark says to him, "Well, is it possible it is an object of non-human construction?" And if Clark answered, then his answer's not in the movie. It then cuts away to a new scene. And do you remember the old? Do you remember old Kevin Russell? Yeah, he's still not been found. Kevin Russell, whoever it was, but Fox does interview his mate from the hotel, and this guy's like a really typical loudmouth Scot, right? And there's subtitles underneath, because this is aimed at Americans, and Americans won't be able to understand them. He says, "Oh, you remember Kevin Russell? He's a fucking fucking this. He's fucking that," and he's like, "He's a fucking this." And so this Scottish guy's like mouthing. I think he's a bit drunk. He's swearing, and like as Scottish people do. And Fox is like on the phone talking to this guy, trying to understand what he's saying. And James, you remember the NASA press conference with old Bill Nelson and David Spergel and the independent group? As always, it's the Q&A that's more. The Q&A is more important than the bloody press conference. And they've got James Fox there. They filmed him doing his question because he asked Bill Nelson a really good question. So I reckon the program's good. It's a good summary. It's a good introduction to the modern disclosure discourse. It's a good piece of new ufology. A lot of it I'm already familiar with, of course, because I'm such a bloody hanorak, isn't it? What escapes my attention? But there were still some things I've not heard before, people I've not heard of before, people speaking out we've never spoken out again. Yeah, it's worth the 15 quid. Not as groundbreaking as Moment of Contact, but yeah, worth the 15 quid, I would say. Definitely. Now, there was something else from UFO Wood that came out as well. Now, this is interesting because this was... Oh, look, let me just show you the... Can I get away with showing you the trailer? Probably. On that video. Here we go. I won't show... Hang on, I'll show you the program. Now, I can't show you the... No, actually, I won't show you the trailer of these, but I'll show you some stills. The program... Here we are. Apparently there's another... Here we go. I'll just show you some stills of this. All right, here's just some stills. There he is. It's James Fox talking. I think that's... Is that Mellon? I think I may be talking to Christopher Mellon. This is him. This is him in Congress with Harry Reid, who's passed away now. Some more stills there. Yes, that's Christopher Mellon there. Trailer for the program. Thing is, if I show you the bloody trailer, you know what's going to happen? I'll get a frigging copyright strike on it, won't I? I'll get this video copyright blocked. It's just stupid. Really stupid, but there you are. Now there's another one called it's called The Battle for Disclosure. Here we go. Here we go. The Battle for Disclosure. Dr. Stephen Greer. Here we go. This came out almost the same time. Here he is. Oh my God. Oh, be still my beating heart. Oh, I need a cold shower. It's Dr. Stephen Greer. Oh my goodness me. Sorry. Ben, stop it. Concentrate. Focus. You're straight. You are a straight man. You fancy women. You're attracted to women. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Now, come on. Yeah, it's true. I am straight. All right. I'm not gay. But it's just a chap like Greer. A chap like Greer can turn a guy's head. He really can. Yeah. This bloke, Dr. Stephen Greer, has come out with his new video, his own new video, called Battle for Disclosure. And it literally came out about a week before it dropped, literally a week before the program. And yeah, it's kind of what I expected, but I had a feeling that this walking male hormone replacement therapy clinic would be making another video about the same time. I kind of didn't think that the release date was a coincidence, because Greer tends to launch his own events at the same time as the other side does. It's almost like a retaliatory strike. James Fox drops his video. I'm going to drop mine, man. I'm going to drop mine. Yep. So it features. It's very much like the last one, which was called Endgame. This is sorry, the one before the last one. He makes so many, doesn't he, Greer? The one before the last one was the last one was Century of the Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. The one before that was Endgame, in which Greer goes to. So this is very similar. You see Greer walking around Washington D.C. being interviewed. Probably if you live in Washington D.C., you probably knew already that Greer was there, because you men would have noticed your beards growing quicker, and you women would have probably had to put some cream on your lips. Because Greer was in Washington, D.C., just think of all the testosterone he was pissing into the water table. You always know when Greer's around because of that. So just, guys, if you have to shave twice a day, it means Greer's in town. But yeah, it has Greer sort of wandering around and being interviewed. His royal muscliness, strutting around in his tight fitting shirt and jeans, I mean, this has happened before. Do you remember when the Congress held its hearing last year? This was supported by George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell and the people like who Greer thinks they're shills, man. They're working for the other side. They're not a humble country doctor from North Carolina like me. Literally, did you know that? I mean, I knew it but a lot of people probably didn't. Just a few hundred yards away from where that was happening, in the National Press Club, Greer was hosting his own little knees up. It was called the UFO Disclosure Press Conference, not to be confused with the 2001 one, which of course he also organised. And I think that again that's when Michael Herrera first appeared and a couple of other people who were in this film. The reason Greer does this, because he can't stand it that Disclosure is not all about him. So he's anti-George Knapp, he's anti-Jeremy Corbell, he's anti-Elizondo. Well, I mean, it's very trendy. It's extremely trendy to be anti-Elizondo these days, isn't it? Greer is anti-Elizondo, but Greer's not really a backslapper. Greer just hates Elizondo because Elizondo embodies this post-2017 new ufology vibe. This new hope for willing ET disclosure, which means that Greer is just one player on a much larger field. He used to be the sole champion. He used to be the prophet, standing on his own Mount Sinai, surrounded by his cheering fans, his exodus of worshipping followers. And he's not anymore. And I mean, the thing is, Greer is essentially a victim of his own success. He was one of the pioneers back he started in about 1990 doing this. And now it's taken on, and now he's just one player in the field. Now, you'd think he would be delighted. I mean, if he was a genuine person, he would be delighted. If it was me, I'd be delighted. I would consider that mission accomplished. I'm delighted that the Pentuck UFO incident is becoming so well researched now. There's a new video just come out about it. I think Yvette Fielding's just covered it. Funny enough, there's a video with me she's used. I won't go into that now, but basically she's used a part of my video in it. Now, I'm happy about that. And it's only kind of an afterthought when I think that's really, really good. I've really achieved something here, that I realized that I've kind of been forgotten in this whole story. Even though I was the ufological journalist who broke that story. Kaz approached a couple of other people. She approached Richard D. Hall. She approached a couple of other people. They weren't interested. She approached me and I got involved. And I'm the one who really broke that story in terms of with the help of Kaz and Gary did. It was me doing the journalism, Gary doing the research, and Kaz doing the witness testimony that broke that story. Now I've been forgotten about, but I don't care. And why doesn't? Because I'm not in this for my ego. Greer is very much so. What does Greer want out of this movement? So I started watching this video in a very cynical mood, and I thought to myself, well, what price is Greer going to pay in his quest to pacify the ugly ravages of his insatiable ego? So even though this video was low, it was cheaper than the new Fox one. It was $5.49. There was also a $3.49 rental option. It was added after I purchased it. But I do wonder. I mean, it wasn't very original. It was Century of the South was more original. Not Century of the South. That's something else. Adam Curtis. The Lost Century. That was a bit more original. This was just a familiar format, directed by the cousins. And of course, the centerpiece is lots of pictures of that. Oh, those testicles framed in denim. Oh, stop it, Ben, stop it. Anyway, yeah, it's in terms of its technical style and atmosphere, it's less groundbreaking than the Lost Century. It covers the latest affairs in conspiratorial ufology. Again, interesting interviews. They've got Tim Burchett, who I absolutely adore. I think he's great. They got this guy from the National Enquirer explaining how the media was used by the CIA for covering up and ridiculing, official ridicule and denial. He has Michael Schratt on, Sean Ryan and Billy Carson. Again, these are good interviews. These guys are regular contributors. The funny thing is, though, he has a very different opinion of ObjectGate to me. He believes it was a psyop to test the public reaction. He essentially thought it was a media trial run on UFO coverage. Now, I'm not so sure about that. I've covered that on special videos about that. But he thought that ObjectGate was timed to match the emergence of people like David Grush coming forward. And Greer believes the whole Grush thing is staged. I don't, as you know. This is where Greer does get backslapper. He does get very backslapper about this. But you realise he doesn't have the same motivations as the other backslappers, as I've explained. He also has Michael Herrera. Now, this guy was the first guy at the 2023 event. He spoke out about. He said that Michael Herrera, who I got mixed up with. I got that guy mixed up with the other one the other day. The other one, which I talked about before. In the other video, but Jason Sands is not the same. Michael Herrera, though, claims that UFOs, ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, being used by human traffickers and weapon smugglers. It's not ET, but it's a man-made aircraft based on alien technology and recovered during crash retrievals. Now, a lot of people dispute Herrera's story. It is a pretty far-out thing there, and again, it's only his word for it. But there's a guy called Nathan. Now, this guy Nathan claims to have served with Herrera in the U.S. Marines, and discredits him. And he even accuses at one point of desertion. He said, "You just done training, and we're going to go off on a deployment, and before you know it." He does a runner. He bunks off. So he accuses Herrera of desertion. So far from being this hero, he's a deserter who just didn't do anything, and now he's telling a story to sort of boast his own ego and things like that. So yeah, I find Herrera. I don't know. I'm not sure about Herrera. I find him less sincere than, say, Jonathan Weygand. That's a witness from the early Greer years in the 90s. The various witnesses he did, the witness testimony he did in the 90s. Weygand has come back and spoken out again, actually, since then. I find Herrera less sincere than Jonathan Weygand. But I don't know the actual true. I don't know exactly for certain that he's lying. I don't know that. Again, I feel sorry for these people if they're telling the truth. But there's another one. Stephen Digner is another guy. Now he encounters an ARV on a live fire exercise, which involved Raytheon. He sounds again more sincere than Herrera, because he describes the smell, the sound, the touch, sensations of how he felt when he saw this thing. That's quite rare. There's another guy called DC Long, who sounds like a character from The Bill, but it's not. It's another military witness. He said he walked into a secret laboratory where some scientists were levitating giant rocks. So, I mean, I hope comes out. I recommend watching it. It's cheaper than The Fox. Some of it could be true, but it's Greer himself. Like I said, what's he going to do to keep himself relevant to the point where he's above everyone else? What would he not do to satiate his massive self-aggrandizement? I mean, he's been accused of things. There's no proof, but just Google what's it called? Via Ben Aviation. I can't remember the actual name. It's something Ben. It's like a Jewish sounding word, but it's a light aircraft company in Florida, and it has a connection to one of his CE5s. There's no proof yet, but there's people looking into the possibility that Greer may have staged some of his CE5 effects. I don't know that's for certain, but if that's the truth, and if he's caught red-handed, then as far as I'm concerned, he's out. He's out on his ear. We do not tolerate fraudsters in this business. Definitely not. Right, now I've come across something else which is a little bit strange, which I wanted to share with you. And I did cover this on Hapanmo Voice. Like I said, if you don't read Hapanmo Voice, you're going to miss out on an awful lot. But this is an example of what could be. Excuse me. I'm going to be like this for quite a long time. This could be an example of what could constitute the beginning of a situation in which catastrophic disclosure takes place. And I'm surprised I didn't hear about this at the time, because it came out about 1 year ago, about 1 year ago, and it was quite significant at the time. I remember it. I don't remember it at the time, but when I first heard about it, I thought, blimey, why haven't I heard about this before? It referred first to something on Reddit. Now, Reddit is a bit of a typical 2020 social media dumping ground of all kinds of information, favouring quantity over quality. And also, what gets upvoted is not always what you might call the finest in terms of mental nutrition. So Reddit is one of these typical drinking out of a fire hose situations. But then occasionally a post appears that stands out, which I should have noticed and didn't. I never heard about that. It has a ring of authenticity. There's some circumstantial evidence that leads to, maybe more rational people in the conspiracy sphere picking it out and highlighting it. And this was it was more than a year ago. It was almost 2 years ago, actually. This was something that appeared on 2 subreddits, Our Aliens and Our Biology. And I'll just show you them, actually, where they actually appeared. Here we go. From the late 2000s to the mid-2010s, I worked as a molecular biologist for a national security contractor in a program to study exobiospheric organisms, EBOs. I will share with you a lot of information on this subject. Feel free to ask questions or ask for clarification. That's on Our Aliens. And there's this one on Our Biology, which essentially is the same one. And there's different. These two are both worth seeing. This was published by someone called. This is actually re-edited by someone called Pube Muncher. It's a good name. And so these 2 pages are slightly different on the 2 subreddits, so they're worth seeing. And I mean, I'm not going to pause. It's too long to pause and read, but it's worth reading through these. Now these are archived because they were actually. This is funny. It says here deleted. You see, it says here deleted. This isn't like a repost, but basically, this was literally from somebody who said, "I am a scientist who worked in this secret program." I wonder if it's Gary Nolan, actually. I can't wonder if he is. I think, was he molecular biology or something else? I can't remember. But he was someone who had signed numerous legal contracts forbidding him from telling anyone about it. But he decided to break. I think it's a he or she. I'm assuming it's male. But obviously that could be just been my tacit subconscious misogyny, as the feminists would say. But I feel uncomfortable calling this person they or it all the time, or he or she. So I'll just say, call it he, and if I'm wrong, I apologise to the lady involved. But he decided to break these rules anonymously because he says every human being has the right to know the truth. When the governments eventually reveal these secrets, they will undoubtedly be a societal upheaval. But in my opinion, the longer we wait, the worse it will be. This is a typical, actually something that a catastrophic disclosure person would say. I mean, I was joking with somebody the other time when I was at bases whether they would ever let me be in one of these programs, because they'd ask me, Ben, you're going to tell your mates about this when we give you the secret information? Will you tell your friends? I'll say, fuck yeah. Yeah. So you have to go through a long vetting and training process to make sure you're not the kind of person they think will do this sort of thing. And this person does go to great lengths to protect their identity, obviously to avoid the consequences of breaching these security arrangements. They describe a bit of personal background. Now, they didn't seek to get involved in the program. They ended up working it because they met the right person at the right conference while they were studying for a PhD, and they were recommended. And I reckon a lot of these people are recruited in that way. I think Hal Puthoff was recruited by the CIA in the 60s when he was at university. I think the Oxford Martin School, as I've explained before, gets a lot of the people involved in the geoengineering program in that way. And when they were first offered a job, they were not told what was involved. The recruitment process is pretty standard. They're not told, "Hey, do you want to go and work on this thing with aliens?" They're just told, "We were involved in we have a lucrative opportunity for you, big salary possibility, promotion prospects, involving a biology program, which is US government for a US government contractor, things like that." So they get approached by these talent scouts if they're the right kind of person. So it's like the spy situation. Remember my Spies of London video? And they are approached as, so it's very different from a normal job. The applicant does not approach the employer approaches the potential applicant, and the applicant is given only information in stages depending on how they react to each piece of information at the actual stage when it's given to them. So this is how spies are recruited, definitely, and indoctrinated. So when this scientist was fully briefed, he was given very little extra information beyond what was functionally necessary to carry out his work. And there are probably other experts in the program working on other aspects of it, which who know nothing of this scientist's duties. They're probably this is compartmentalization. They're probably just a handful of people in senior management who know the full picture. And the scientist actually works this out for himself. That's the case. He says there's a boss who comes in every week to attend meetings, but he doesn't have much to do with our everyday life. And the scientist says, well, I give several pieces of information, which is interesting. Like, he worked at a laboratory at Fort Detrick in Maryland. Now, Fort Detrick, he did say that he would inject deliberate red herrings into his testimony to bury his true identity even deeper. I mean, Fort Detrick is an obvious possibility because it has always been the center of the United States Biological Defense Program and the National Cancer Institute, which is, well, I can't say too much on YouTube, but let's just say those two organizations are probably very closely linked. So it wouldn't be surprised me if there was this exobiological entity program. It will be based there. There are only a few people involved, 25 people altogether. And he doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't want to blow their cover. So he wants to protect them as well as himself. In my view, operations at this level of classification are spread out among numerous locations, including maybe some abroad, maybe some here at Oxford University, hence my video, Oxford Secret Science. The scientist says they've got 4 alien bodies, badly dismembered. He describes them as looking like motorcycle crash victims, probably because they were in crash retrievals, and his team are studying them. And he goes into a lot of details. The alien genetics are similar to our own, which could be a case of parallel evolution, in which different forms develop in the same way because of being in a similar habitat. But that seems really a bit too coincidental. It's more like they were related to us in some way. And he says their genome appears to be artificial, a project of genetic engineering, which matches reports of PGLFs, the program-generated life forms, based at places like Peasmore and Dulcie, the deep underground military bases. I dispute the notion that these creatures are all products of secret human government for several reasons. Firstly, their antiquity. People have had encounters with them long before long before we invented even modern science. Just Google one gene at Australia, you'll see what I mean. It's interesting, by the way, how the grey aliens become an icon of modern pop culture since their depiction on cave walls thousands of years ago. And the scientist does remark to their resemblance of that, actually. I also don't agree with this human future hypothesis. Traveling backwards in time is probably against the fundamental laws of physics. It creates causality paradoxes and things like that. So this idea is they're us come back from the future. It means they're probably from parallel universes, if that's the case. They're So I think the many worlds hypothesis simulates the experience of backwards time travel, even if it can't be done literally. But there are pieces of information from many angles claiming the Greys, or some of them, are some kind of biological robot, genetically engineered, maybe by us when we get the technology from the ETs, or also by the ETs for a specific purpose. I mean, this Redditor actually puts it that way. He says, they're artificial, ephemeral, and disposable organisms created for a purpose that still partially eludes us. Then there's no doubt, though, if their genetics are a product of biotechnology, then it's extremely advanced biotechnology. And the scientist is convinced it is the case. Their skin is unusual because it doubles up as their excretory system. So they release the equivalent of urine from pores on their skin. They don't have a bladder. They release it from their skin, which could explain the fact that they smell bad, like one of the witnesses at Virginia said, "Oh, this terrible smell of ammonia." It's got a four-lobed brain, and the eyes are covered by biosynthetic film, which is why they look black. They have more conventional eyes underneath. So it reminds me of the alien autopsy where they pull off the eye covers. They have no bone marrow. Their blood is brown. That matches a description given by Timothy Good. And they have some organs like ours, like a heart, but they have an organ called a hepatorenal that doesn't exist in any Earth species, but it combines the function of the liver and kidneys. It has a very underdeveloped digestive system. It's got no teeth or stomach, indicating it's only intended to consume a limited diet in liquid form, probably some kind of broth. The scientist was told a little about their psychology and comments that the aliens have like a hive mind, a conscious independent from their bodies. They resemble some of the spiritual traditions of Earth. This reminds me of what Jon Stewart said, and Sean David Morton, the alien interview. Now, the scientist does come back a few times on one of the subreddits to answer the members' questions. But at one point, they then reveal a connection between themselves and the Battelle Memorial Institute. That fits in with what Dr. Irina Scott has told me. Now, I don't know if they let that slip accidentally or if it was deliberate, but it may have led to what happened next. Now, again, this does stand out in a world where UFO whistleblowers are like two a penny. It's the technical level of their language. I didn't even understand a lot of it because it's very, very jargon heavy. So the person behind the information is scientifically educated, and many commentators feels that there is this subtext of validity from it, including some who are scientists themselves. Now, within days that the post was put up, it was removed. It may have some connection to his confession about Battelle. I don't know. Dr. Irina Scott says there's some alien UFO projects going on there. I don't know if the author did that themselves or whether, it was done for him. The author's account was deleted. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they were silenced to plug the leak. I hope he or she is safe, whoever he or she is. But luckily, of course, the posts were archived. As a result, millions of people, including me, have downloaded them. There's also a YouTube studio version about this, which is worth seeing. If if you just put in Reddit scientist, you'll find it. So now I'm convinced that these programs exist, probably in major military, defense, industrial, academic institutions, maybe in secret places here in Oxford University, which is why I made that video. I made that video years ago called Oxford Secret Science. So once again, I mean, you can have a look through these. They're quite long. I'd say they're half-hour reads, and as I say, it talks about things some of which I couldn't even understand. Some of this terminology, osteocytes, osteoblasts, things like that, and things like words like that. But there you go. It's all, as you see, locked post. No comments can be posted, and it's been archived. It's deleted, so this is an archived version. So you can check that out. Check that out on Reddit. Very interesting stuff. There's a couple of video versions of it, like I said. Now the drone situation is still going on. Now I'm not going to say too much about this because I did cover it. I did several videos actually covering this specifically, which you can find I did very recently. This again, I'm pretty convinced that this is not just like normal drones. I know that people like Steve Mumbling and others disagree. And of course we've got this real issue. We've got a real problem now because every man and his dog is now going to New Jersey. They're photographing planes and they're putting them up online saying, look, I've solved the mystery. This is all they are. And of course, then the skeptics and backslappers jumped on that and they posted saying, this is all the drones ever were. Look, here's a photo of a plane. So this is a common problem, unfortunately, with paranormal and ufological research. You get like the signals noise ratio problem and then false debunking because people deliberately gather more evidence than they should, and you get like extra meaningless evidence, which is then posted as a solution. But anyway, I don't think that's the case. We're talking about objects. There's the scale and duration of this flap, the fact that they don't act like drones. Some of the more interesting cases, they have the 5 observables. There's been no arrests. There's been no shoot downs. The anti-drone weapons don't work on them. People say things like, "Oh, we shine a light on them and they go dark." There's the fact that the FAA have brought in restrictions on low-flying aircraft. There's the classified briefing. There's this incredible situation where they're deploying special forces to deal with it. They're deploying like the SAS or Navy SEALs to deal with a problem which is essentially hobbyists, get flying things out of their garages. Or at worst, some Chinese things deployed from submarines, which have a way that they are, which have a simple way of shooting down, which the base security could do themselves. So why doesn't the base security have these things too? Well, there could be. There's some breaking news actually, which I haven't really looked into, which I'll go into. But in my view, the drone thing is kind of the drone situation. I think is more than it seems to be. I'll just again, I won't show you any videos, but I'll show you a bit of this here. These are some typical ones here, some typical drone photos, and there's some videos you can see too. Here we go. I think that's the same one. See, obviously there are some. See, this is the problem now. A lot of the debunked ones, like these ones that are obviously aircraft, are now floating to the top. They're floating to the top of the pile. This here is obviously a helicopter. She's even got the green light on the right-hand side. So the more interesting ones are getting lost in the noise. Hope you can see these things. Yeah, you can. And now, of course, it is simply being used as another. The word drone is now simply being used as a euphemism to cover up. Hence the image behind me, because we're looking at Roswell all these years later, using they're not saying it's a weather balloon, they're saying it's drones. Hence my background image. Okay, one thing's not happening is what else doesn't happen. And this, some people are being right utter bloody idiots here. Look, this was this was posted by Tupacabra. I actually retweeted this. Look. Okay, don't need a soundtrack. But look, this is a guy. This guy has gone to he's gone to New Jersey, and look what he's doing. I know Tupacabra is a controversial figure, but look what he's doing. He's got this light thing, and he's suspended it on a balloon, and he's flying it into the air deliberately. I mean, why? He obviously wants people to photograph it and say, "Look, I've seen a UFO. Look," and so he can sit back and laugh at fooling these people. This is not helping. This is making things worse. This is muddying. This person is an enemy of UFO truth. And look, I put here, look, damn it, they're making things worse. Idiots. This is informational pollution. I tweeted this in response. And Charles Harrington replies, it's all bullshit, just like this. Well, he's wrong there. I mean, I didn't actually reply to him. Maybe I should leave a text reply to Charles Harrington here. But he's wrong there. But I mean, it's understandable that people think this when morons like this person here, like the person who launched this fake UFO, are doing this kind of thing. It's understandable that people look at all this, especially if they feel embarrassed when they get fooled themselves, and they think, well, they just think to themselves, well, what's the use? I might as well be, they might think, well, it's all rubbish and all nonsense. Therefore, because they're probably angry with themselves. They're angry with the people who fooled them, and so this is a quite typical psychological reaction. Apathy, indifference. What's the word? Indignation. Who gives a damn anymore? They're all right. It's all rubbish anyway. It's a natural It's a natural sort of emotional response that you'd expect. Right. I've mentioned before. Going back to Trump. I'm in the hopes for Trump's disclosure, and I've said it before. Just to recap what he said when he was on the Lex Friedman show, because Lex asked him at one point, "What would you do if you were re-elected? Would you release more information about UFOs?" Trump replied, "Oh yes, sure, I'll do that. I'd love to do that. I have to do that, but they're also pushing me on Kennedy, and I did release a lot, and people come to me and beg me not to do it, but I'll be doing it very early on. No, I would do that." And later on in the video, he adds, a lot of people who went to Epstein's Island, but fortunately I was not one of them. Lex replies, it's very strange for people on that list of the clients who went to the island. It's not been made public. And he says, yeah. Trump says, yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? It probably will be, by the way. And Lex says, so if you're able to, will you? And Trump says, I'll be taking a look at it. Now, Kennedy's very interesting because it's so many years ago. They do that for danger because it endangers certain people. So Kennedy's very different to the Epstein thing. But yes, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein thing. I have no problem with it. So he's essentially saying there that he has the intention for disclosure on not just UFOs, but several subjects, including the other big bombshell, the other big secret, which is the abuse of children on the scale and severity of it. Should we trust Trump? That's the thing. I mean, he was also on Joe Rogan, where he actually raised the subjects of UFOs on Joe Rogan. He actually said, he says, he quotes a conversation he had with someone, where someone says, you promised you'd release the records on the JFK assassination. And he said, Judge, if they showed you what they showed me, you wouldn't have released it either. And I said, who's they? And what did they show you? And he said, Judge, someday when we're on the phone. And then he raised his voice, and there aren't 15 people listening to this phone call. So Trump essentially saying that he was threatened from releasing stuff. But he has been asked to release more files, but what he says are good and very talented people. He says there might be some national security issues he didn't necessarily know about, but he's signaling that all is not well in Washington. And he says there's a secret government file on Martin Luther King Jr. as well. And he raises the subject of UFOs and says he's been told a lot about it. And he didn't go as far as what Lex Friedman said, but he said he'd interviewed pilots, he didn't specify what kind, who told him they'd seen things like a round ball that was not a comet or meteor capable of hypersonic speeds, which is one of the 5 observables. And I got the feeling that Trump's a bit uncomfortable there with Joe's question. But Joe senses, then he softens up. And he talks about things like probes on Mars and the balloon, Object Gate, things like that with the balloon crisis. He talks about the Nimitz footage. I don't go along with the Peter Hyatt thing, but it's interesting to just analyze the way he's behaving. Now, the thing about the modern conspiracy sphere is that people who put too much weight on statement analysis tend to be the individuals who've given up on all other forms of scholarship. So the statement analysis is like a replacement for all other methods of investigation. So Trump was evasive. He was uncommitted in this particular interview. But is it still possible that that won't change? I think it is. I think it is not. I can't say too much on YouTube about that certain letter of the alphabet, but I have covered on other videos on Alt Tech exclusives that I believe that we're looking at a situation where we are literally looking at a situation where Trump, if Trump's not the disclosure president, put it that way, then who else is going to be? Okay, there's a couple more things I'd like to bring up on this particular video to bring us up to date on what's going on. And some of it is breaking news. Others are things that have been around for a while. Now, there was this particular article here I want to look at here. This is Richard Dolan mentioned this. It is UFO whistleblower David Grush talks about UFOs during Manhattan secret meeting among the hotshots. Now, I'm not sure. This is by someone called Kendra Stacy of the Science Times. Now, this is a silly photograph. That's clearly a lenticular cloud, and it looks a bit sort of saucer-like. People think, yeah, if you see something like that, that's all it is. It's not really aliens. It's just this, and you're mistaking it, but it's not necessarily true. But it says here, David Grush, former U.S. intelligence officer, revealed UFO secrets during a secret meeting in Manhattan, attended by various hotshots. The meeting was attended by various esteemed guests, including officials from the CIA, FBI, Department of Homeland Security. Tech entrepreneurs, bigwigs from Wall Street also joined. In total, 60 people were there to talk at the penthouse in Manhattan. During the event, photo taking was prohibited. So it's not to be confused with the Seoul Convention, which you might have already heard about. The only information was leaked by an anonymous participant at the meeting who snapped shots of Grush. According to this person who leaked the event, the meeting was hosted by a bigwig from Wall Street as well as his lawyer friend. This person asked that it was a small saloon-type talk. This reminds me, by the way, this reminds me considerably, if you remember the In-N-Out Club thing I went to. Do you remember the Goat Locker? Do you remember that weird meeting in London? I discussed it. This was years ago. I'm not going to dig up links and old pages now, but you can find it if you look. It's linked. There's a link in the description box to the UFO Disclosure portal. You'll find it on there. But I was invited to this meeting in London at this really elite London club. And there was some kind of demonstrational thing for UFO disclosure. It was like very, very strange. Like they had a big marquee set up. David Hosian did a talk, and there was all these like really posh people with posh suits and women with jewelry and guys with gold watches. Not your usual UFO conference at all. But I'll never forget that. It was very strange indeed. Grush also conducted it for free. And do you need to see this? I don't need to show you this. And even flew to New York just for the meeting. Grush claims that his sources worked with a 40-foot UAP that was as big as a football field when they entered. That's interesting. That's like a TARDIS type thing, isn't it? You go in, it looks smaller on the outside. The object was said to have the capacity to manipulate space, time, and use. Don't know what it means by use there. It was also said to harness sufficient energy to power 70,000 homes a year. Oh, just that? Is that all? Probably more than that. The person who leaked the event also explains that the idea was to gather a group of believers and skeptics from various walks of life for a discussion regarding Grush and the things he presented. The leaker adds up. Excuse me. Most of the individuals who attended left as believers of what Grush had said, or of how Grush believed what he said was true. The attendees were given a chance to ask questions after the presentation, while the exact questions asked remains a mystery. It's what they were asked regarding the looks and source of the aliens. Blimey. And it just gives a bit of a background here to David Grush. Yeah, which is the rest of it. So yeah. This is the first I've heard about this particular event, but it does sound very much like a thing at the In and Out Club. You know, oh God, I keep changing my minds about things, don't I? I'll find, where is it? Where was it? This was the disclosure meeting. I'll find it. But basically, I was summoned to this event. I went there with Heidi, do you remember? And I had to go out the back because I wasn't dressed properly. I didn't have the right attire. I was supposed to dress in posh clothes. And it was a very, very weird thing. Here we are, weird meeting in London. It's easier than me just explaining it, but here, look, it was this event here. Roswell 1947 UFO researcher, Roswell Revisited by Dave Hodrian. And there is number 30th of May, 6 p.m. by the Light Modulation Limited. Oh, that was the company that organised it. And the Maya team. It was at Forge St James's Square, London, which is the address of the In and Out Club. And you go through here. This is another photo taken. That's the goat for the goat locker. Oh, they had these two people. There was this guy dressed up as an alien pilot, and there was like this woman there with a short skirt beside him. That was kind of a novelty piece. But yeah, that was very weird to me. That felt like I was involved in. I'd unwittingly been summoned to some kind of secret promotional event for UFO Disclosure. I described this to Steve Bassett, and he agreed with me. That was very weird, wasn't it? Yeah. Very strange indeed. Now we've got some breaking news, guys. You may this literally just came out as I was going on the air. There's this thing here. You may remember that 2 days ago, New Year's Day, there was a couple of terrorist attacks, apparently. And one was this guy here. Let's go scroll back up to the top. Matthew Livelsberger. Now, this is he's a former member of US Special Forces who drove to Trump Tower in Las Vegas in a Cybertruck, one of those big Tesla things. I actually filmed one of them, if you remember, I filmed one of them in this car park at Contact in the Desert. And he blew it up. Now, he apparently shot himself before the explosive detonated, like he lit the fuse and then just shot himself. And the whole thing blew up. Now, no one was hurt no one was killed except him. The Tesla truck, the very strong chassis actually contained a lot of the explosion. But then he appeared on the Sean Ryan podcast as well. And he says firework mortars, camp fuel canisters in a Tesla truck exploded outside Donald Trump's Las Vegas hotel early on New Year's Day. There was a single casualty. A few people were injured. And this was the guy who did it, Matthew Livelsberger. And he sent a manifesto through to a friend of his, an Army intelligence officer called Sam Shoemate, who's been interviewed here, if I can get it to load, on the Sean Ryan show. Now, Sean Ryan interviews loads of interesting people like Dr. Stephen Greer and that. It's people like that. So I do like his show. It's very good. Just wait for the browser's playing up a little bit. I hope you can still hear me. And is the manifesto real? After the alleged manifesto began circulating, there was some questions over whether the suspect has written it. They believe that the letter shared to Sean Ryan was authored by the bombing suspect. And Shoemate said Friday that he received an email from Livelsberger on Tuesday, and the email said, "In case I do not make it to my decision point or onto the Mexican border, I'm sending this now. Please do not release this until New Year's Day and keep my identity private till then. First off, I'm not under duress, hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification." Don't know if that's actually going to help, but a lot of people have those cars, but I think they may be trying to say that that he was somehow that this person would know that. What we've been seeing with drones is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China in the East Coast. But throughout history, the US, only we in China have this capability. Our open location of this activity is in the box below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently, I don't know if you need to see that. Here we go. Switch it off. As recently has picked up. As of now, it's not just a show of force, and they're using it similar to how they use the balloons for SIGINT and ISR. SIGINT is signals intelligence. I don't know what ISR means, something reconnaissance, I don't know, which is also part of the integrated communication system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. Well, as you know, I doubt that anything other than the first balloon was an actual balloon. Anyway, he continues. The so what is because of their speed and stealth of these unmanned AC. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. US government needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it and weaponizing it, and how China is employing them, and what the way forward is. China is poised to attack anywhere in the East Coast. I have been followed for over a week now from Homeland or FBI, and they're looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico, but won't because they know I'm armed and have a massive VBIED. I don't know what that means. Vehicle-based what's an explosive device? What's IED stand for? Integrated explosive device or something like that. I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. I have knowledge of this program and also war crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the admin, DOD, DEA and CIA. I conducted targeting for these strikes for over 125 buildings. 65 were struck because of CVCAS. I don't know what that means. That killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. USFORA, I don't know what that means. US forces Afghanistan, I think that means. Continued strikes after spotting civilians on initial ISR. It was supposed to take 6 minutes and scramble all aircraft in CENTCOM. The UN basically called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of that cover-up with US forces, Afghanistan, an agent redacted of the DEA. So I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either. I worked for General Miller's on this as well, and the response to Bala Mughab, AOBS commander at the time, redacted, can validate this. You need to elevate this to the media so we avoid a world war, because this is a mutually assured destruction situation. For vetting, my LinkedIn is, and he gives his LinkedIn details here. What he's basically saying is that he says that they have anti-gravity in them. That's the thing, that these are anti-gravity devices, which is why they're not normal drones. Where was he actually said that? I'm trying to find the details of where he said that. It's not actually in the manifesto, but at somewhere as I said, this is breaking news. I don't have all the details, but at some point he says that the Richard Dolan talks about it, maybe in the description box here. Doesn't actually say here in the description box. As I said, this is breaking news. I haven't had a look into it properly, but basically he's saying that drones they're man-made autonomous aerial vehicles with anti-gravity propulsion and lift. Free energy, in other words. Which is why they're not like normal drones. I don't know, as I said, only just heard about this now. But we've talked a lot about the United States of America, but of course there are lots of other countries in the world, although some Americans may not realize this. I came across this interesting article here in the Daily Mirror. Must be true. Putin cancels Russia's New Year's Eve fireworks over Ukraine war as mysterious UFO spotted. Right. So UFO being something connected to Ukraine. Vladimir Putin has once again been forced to cancel New Year's Eve firework displays after a poll showed people were against the fireworks celebration during the war. And there's normally it's a huge fireworks display, but a UFO was spotted in Siberian skies. Right. I don't know. Again, I don't know much about this. I've only just come across this particular article, but it just goes to show that possibly, as many exopoliticians understand, including Stephen Bassett, it's likely that disclosure, if it's not catastrophic disclosure, it will be controlled disclosure from another nation. And I think Russia is number one at the moment. I mean, until Trump won in November, I would say it was number one in the world. Now Trump has won. I say the USA is now number one for willing disclosure, controlled disclosure. But Russia's still number two, I think. Britain, we ain't got a chance over here. Can you imagine Starmer standing up there and saying, "Hello, everybody. I'm here to talk to you about something interesting today. We've got aliens in hangars." Forget that. All right, guys. So what's my next video going to be? I don't know. But I'll be watching these various instances very carefully, and I will be making more videos as soon as something interesting comes along. I do have plans for possible videos to do with the weather. It depends if we get snow or not. So if we get snow here, I might do a nice snowy video, but it's still not certain. I'll believe it when I see it. like disclosure, because Greer says apparently Greer has put out this tweet saying that there's going to be a major announcement within 30 days. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. But anyway, I'm going to continue to make videos. I mean, my voice could be like this for quite a while, maybe even months. I'll just play it every day as it comes. But I know that when I have colds and flu and things like this, the voice effect lingers terribly. But in the meantime, thank you all of you for watching Hapanwo TV. Look forward to making lots of wonderful videos and getting great comments from you in 2025. And I will, of course, be covering the inauguration when it happens. I'll be doing a video about that too, or at least an article. Thanks for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.